Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the KOSS Utility series. That's right, this is a series of headphones that we're going to take a look at today. And I guess just a quick note up front, like as I put in my description, yeah, I've listened to a lot of headphones and a lot of IEMs over the years and some fairly expensive stuff, but when it comes to just my own personal downtime, I legitimately still enjoy and still very often go back to listening to very budget KOSS memes, which is what we've got here. So this is KOSS's new line of portable headsets that they're calling the Utility series, and what makes it distinct is that they all have a replaceable cable with a kind of an interesting mechanic. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of it at this point. We'll kind of give you some impressions in this video. But all of these sets, and we'll go back to the table so you can take a look. We've got the KOSS KPH40, we've got the KOSS Porta Pro Utility, and we've got the KEB90. And all three of these sets, what they have in common is that the cable is kind of replaceable. I say kind of replaceable because I'll show you kind of how it works. So basically, the cable on each of these things terminates in this sort of like female 2.5 millimeter connector. This part is not replaceable, but here at the 2.5 millimeter connector, it is replaceable, and it comes with a stock 3.5 millimeter cable, but you can actually replace it with, their standard, get a replacement 3.5 millimeter. That's what we're seeing over here. But over here, what they're kind of demonstrating is that you could alternatively replace it with a USB-C or a lightning cable, which is what I believe I've got here in these two boxes. So with this utility set, you're kind of getting, I guess the utility is coming from two different things. From one, the cable is replaceable, which is cool. People always wanted KOSS cables to be replaceable, although I don't know that this is necessarily the mechanism we were asking for, but the cable is replaceable. But then also additionally, you get to pick kind of what type of termination you want. Do you want your standard headphone jack, or do you want your fancy schmancy smartphone connector? That's what the Utility series offers. So in this video, I've got the sets here. I have not unboxed them. I have not used them yet. That's what we're going to do today. But that means this is not going to be a review. In fact, I don't know that I plan on doing a review of these things because they're KOSS stuff, and they kind of are all just about the same. Maybe the KEB90 will probably be the most unique product here, because the UR40 that I've got here and the Porta Pro, these are using the same standard 60 millimeter driver that you see in a bunch of other KOSS stuff. And I've already done a pretty extensive review of the KSA75, the Porta Pro, and the KPH40i. Link in the description below, actually, if you want to check out that review. But if you just want to see what's inside the box of these things and get my first impressions, well, that's what we're going to do today. And then for the truly dedicated nerds out there, I'm one of them, at the end of this video, I'm going to kind of sign off and send the disinterested folks home. But for the nerds out there like me, I'm actually going to attempt to produce frequency responses of these headphones. And I'll warn you, well, we'll get into the caveats a little bit more later, but these frequency responses are not going to be as reliable as my standard frequency responses because these are headphones and not earphones. But that is besides the point. That is kind of the overview of what we're doing, and I guess we will get into breaking these things down one by one, starting with, you know what? Let's start with the let's start with the KPH40. All right, this is the one that, frankly, I'm the most excited about for a couple of reasons. One, I think it looks pretty handsome. The price on this one's actually pretty competitive too. It's about $40, so a little bit more expensive than the KPH30i, which I've still got. But the big difference here is the headband, essentially, right? So this headband that they are using here on the KPH40 is actually, as far as I can tell, the same headband that came with the KOSS Cross Retrospect headset, which is the headband that I've been using over here. So I'm pretty interested to see that on an official KOSS product. So that much is pretty cool about it. But otherwise, I don't know that there's a whole lot to differentiate this from your other standard KOSS memes, right? You got your standard 15 to 25,000 hertz frequency response. That's standard. You've got 60 ohms impedance, which confirms that this is the same driver that you get in the KPH40 and the Porta Pro. All these metrics are basically the same, and I guess the only thing that's worth calling out here is that I mentioned these sets work with one of 3 different cables: 3.5 millimeter, USB-C, or Lightning. I got that wrong, but just to clarify, these do come with the 3.5 millimeter in the box, which is what we're about to find out as I crack this thing open. And hopefully, you know what? Let me go grab a knife real quick. I'm back with a knife. I should be prepared, right? But yeah, let's see. They just got a little bit of sticker action going up here. That's a little cleaner to do it with a knife, so I prefer to do it with a knife. As soon as I cut myself, I will regret that decision, but hopefully that's not today. Let's see. I don't know why I'm being precious about this box. I could just tear it open. You guys would be satisfied, but I feel an obligation to keep this box usable. I'm not sure why. What's that about? How do you guys feel about unboxing your things? Do you just tear them open and discard everything? You know what? I think I'm just gonna have to tear it open. There we go. All right, box 1 of 3 has been unlocked. Let's see what we get inside here. Okay, as expected, not a whole lot, but we do have the KPH40. We've got a little bit of paperwork for the folks who enjoy a little bit of light reading. I'm going to skip that for now. I hope you don't mind, but we can just take a look at the KPH40 unit itself. And as kind of I described before, it's got this part is attached, and this is not removable, just to clarify. It is soldered up here onto the drivers, although you can replace these pretty easily if you're into that sort of thing. But then in the box, they include this part, which is the replaceable. This is the utility, so to speak. This is the standard 3.5 millimeter to 2.5 millimeter cable. All right. So 3.5 millimeter, this goes into your phone, your digital audio player, your amp, whatever you want to connect it to. And this 2.5, this connects up here into that. And so you have, I don't know, somewhat of a large, bulky Y-split. Interesting. It's not quite rounded. There's actually a little bit of a squareness to it. Let's see if we can get that on camera. See, it's a little bit of a square shape, although this piece down here also, I guess, is a little bit of a square shape. Interesting. Okay, but otherwise, you've got yourself your standard 60 ohm drivers here on this headband. They do have a somewhat unique and new enclosure. If you are a KOSS aficionado like myself, you'll probably notice that this looks a little bit different than your standard Porta Pro KPH. Let me actually pull this in. So this is my KOSS Cross Retrospect headband that I actually put Porta Pro drivers on. So this is what it would look like if you just put raw Porta Pro drivers on it with Yaxi pads. And then here's the KPH40, and you can see it's a slightly different aesthetic, but I don't know, frankly, it's the same exact headband design otherwise, besides the fact that this one's silver and this one appears to be painted in kind of a matte gray. But it's got, you know, a little bit of adjustment on it. Frankly, I know a lot of people are pretty big fans of taking the KOSS stuff, especially the KSC75, and putting it on a Parts Express headband. I'm frankly not a big fan of the Parts Express headband, mostly because it doesn't fit this big head. But I have found that this headband, the KOSS Cross Retrospect headband, is actually, it fits my head. In fact, it fits it without being, you know, at max size, right? So I've still got a little bit of adjustment available on it. But not only that, I think it just feels a lot nicer than the Parts Express headband, and that's what we've got here with the KPH40. So I guess I can go ahead and throw this thing on my dome, give you a preview of what it looks like on the head of a random dude, but there you go. Here's the KOSS KPH40. So I'll just say, you know, it feels like KOSS stuff. It's lightweight, it's inexpensive, and probably sounds good. I haven't heard it yet, but given it's the same driver that I have on my my set right here, kind of have a good sense of what it's going to sound like. The big difference is actually going to be and I'm curious to find this out, is does this enclosure have an effect on the frequency response? Because I find in the KPH40, the enclosure in that, I believe, does have an effect on the frequency response. And then the other thing that's going to change this between this UR40 and my little KOSS creation here, the other thing that's going to change the frequency response is going to be these pads, right? So these are Yaxi pads. You can get these things on Amazon for like 12 bucks. These are your stock Porta Pro pads. And by adding these pads, you do actually change the frequency response a little bit. You make it a little bit less bassy, which may or may not be what you want, but that's what you get with these pads. So I'm going to guess here in this form, it's going to sound, frankly, probably a lot like a Porta Pro. Maybe a little bit less clamp pressure than your standard Porta Pro, but I don't know. It's pretty comparable. But otherwise, I don't know that there's a whole lot for me to say about this headphone for now. So I guess we'll crack into the next box. Say goodbye to the KPH40. We will bring this thing back in a little bit, again, for the nerds, so we can try and measure it. For now, let's pull in the next box and take a look at, give it another spin. That's some weak spinning. This is the KOSS KEB90, which is actually an earphone. Of the 3 sets, this is the only one that's an earphone. And what's interesting is I don't believe the KEB90 is based on anything, right? Where the KPH40 is obviously based on the Porta Pro and KPH driver, same set, right? The Porta Pro utility is obviously based on the Porta Pro. As far as I know, and I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with KOSS IEMs, but as far as I can tell, this appears to be kind of an all-new model, which makes it pretty interesting. But yeah, the KEB90. Let's see if there's anything interesting we can find out about it here on the back of the box. Let's see. We do have some specs, so similar frequency range that they claim. 16 ohms because it's not the same driver; it's a different driver inside of here. Free sensitivity of 98 dB SPL. Yeah, frankly, that is not very informative. I'm pretty sure this is a dynamic driver. I would be very surprised if it was anything else. And I guess also worth clarifying up front that this thing is actually a little bit expensive. The pricing on the KEB90 is 70 bucks, which is not cheap. But let's go and crack it open and see what we get for your 70 bucks. It's interesting that the IM is the most expensive of the bunch, possibly because it's, a new model and it's not kind of recycling KOSS parts that they've used on a bunch of other headphones and have been making for literally 30, 40 years. Let's take a look here in the KEB. All right, we've got our ear cushions. It's a weird way to say ear tips. We've got, what is this? Oh, an interesting little carry case, right? It's just like really thin and flat. Doesn't smell like anything, but it's definitely not leather. But it's got like a little flexible band in it that snaps shut, and ostensibly you can carry your earphones in that. That's kind of cute. Here we've got the earphones themselves. Let's see if there's anything else of interest in this box before I discard it. There's not. There's manuals if you want to read that stuff later. But for now, let's take a look and see what's inside these things. So the ear cushions. I'm expecting no surprises, and in fact, no surprises. Although, this is kind of surprising, is so you get your standard small, medium, and large silicone ear tips, and then you also get a set of medium and large foam tips, which is cool, but kind of surprising that they actually left the mediums blank. I'm guessing, obviously, the mediums are already pre-installed, but it's pretty atypical for a company to leave a place for them. I guess that's cute if you wanted to save this thing for storing them later, but otherwise, let's see. Take a look at the set itself, if I can get this box open gracefully. All right. So here we have our standard, interesting, they've got this a little bit mixed up, but here we've got that standard 3.5 millimeter utility cord, same that came with the KPH40. So still 3.5 millimeter on one end and 2.5 millimeter on the other. Then we've got the earpieces, which, let's pop these things out. And there you go. It's kind of an interesting look for an IM, isn't it? It just comes on a little cable like that, and then you can make it 3.5 millimeter, make it USB, make it lightning. That's kind of a neat thing. Although I guess while we're here talking about this thing, I'm gonna make it known that I'm not a big fan of this cable, which frankly is not maybe a big surprise. Most KOSS cables I'm not a really big fan of, but I would say I'm especially not a big fan of this cable for a couple of reasons. One, you can see that it is quite memory prone, right? Coming out of the box, this thing is looking like a square wave, which is an interesting look. But the other thing that I'm just not a big fan of is the fact that it's a flat cable, right? So you can see how wide it is here, and then if I flip it up that way, you can see how narrow it is. I am personally not a fan of flat cables. I mean, maybe there's some benefit to them that I'm just missing, but all I can think of is that when I want to put it away, when I want to roadie wrap it, look at this. This is going to be just disgusting. So basically this flat cable is just roadie wrap proof, which is unfortunate. But let's go ahead and take a look at the earpieces a little bit more closely. They do appear to be some sort of metal shell, which is nice. Although maybe let's see if this is plastic. Yeah, maybe up here the front piece of it appears to be plastic, and then the back piece here is surrounded in metal. There is some text on there. Let's see if I can read that through my viewfinder. Not really. KOSS KEB90 utility, and then a bunch of other small letters. Okay, but I don't know. I guess I'll throw this thing in my ears and see how this thing's meant to be worn. There's no preformed ear hooks in this thing. In fact, actually, maybe worth calling out, I just noticed this. The ear tips are actually color coordinated. So the right earpiece has a red color and the left earpiece has blue. I actually kind of like that. I dig that solution. But these things are definitely meant to be worn hanging down. Could I wear them hanging up? I don't think so, because if I wore them hanging up, the nozzle will be pointing the wrong direction. And I guess you could swap them left and right, but because the cable is attached like this, there's no way to correct for that by swapping the cable. So basically you're going to have to wear these things hanging down. But let's go ahead and show you what they look like as I do that. Okay. But yeah, I would say it's relatively comfortable, you know, slots in, seems not super secure, and this is kind of a downside to an IEM that doesn't wrap around the ear, is that if anything tugs on it, it's going to fall out pretty easily. Okay. But otherwise, I mean, it goes in easy. It's small and unobtrusive. There's no sharp edges or anything like that, so I think people are going to find this thing pretty comfortable. The one thing I'll call out here as I'm wearing this thing is that, look, I don't know that the utility series is necessarily targeted at people that are interested in like using it for work. The term utility series makes me think that it's targeted at people for work. And for me, when I think of that, I'm thinking of like, you know, being on Zoom calls and stuff like that. At least that's my kind of work. And while the stock cable does not have a microphone, the USB-C and Lightning cables do have microphones. The one thing I wanted to call out while I'm here talking about these things and how they fit is that, for my personal preference, when it comes to wearing headsets and talking to people, whether it's on a Zoom call or even gaming, I really don't like IEMs for that purpose, personally. Obviously, you know, I love IEMs for a lot of other reasons and a lot of other purposes, but when I'm talking, I actually don't like IEMs, and because of the way they call it, I guess, the occlusion effect, right? Having your ears plugged up, what it does for sound, especially the sound of like your own voice, it just makes it this like really kind of uncomfortable, boomy experience that I prefer not to have. And so for that reason, I actually much prefer headphones if I'm talking to people, and especially open-backed headphones. But yeah, that is the KEB90. Let's go ahead and move this thing aside and pull in our final KOSS Utility Series headphone. This is the Porta Pro, the venerable Porta Pro. No real surprises here. This is going to be the Porta Pro that you know, but with that new utility cable system. Let's see if I can crack this one open. Okay, interesting. They didn't tape this one. The one difference that I can tell from pictures is that it does look like the The plastic on the headphone is a slightly different material. It looks a little translucent, which is kind of cool. Let's see. I guess as I'm unboxing this, I can say the Porta Pro Utility specifically is $50, which I believe is about the same price as the standard Porta Pro, although you can get the standard Porta Pro on sale very often for cheaper. In fact, on Amazon right now, as of this video, the original Porta Pro you can get for like $25. So is it worth paying double the price to get the utility version? My honest guess is probably not, from my personal preferences, but if you need to connect it to a USB or Lightning connector, well, maybe it is. So like the other sets, of course, we've got the 3.5 millimeter to 2.5 millimeter cable over here. Nothing different here. We do get a little carry pouch, which is pretty standard. This comes with a couple of other Porta Pros that I've had. This is actually a pretty useful little pouch. I've used this for other things, including like cameras and a Game Boy and stuff like that. I like these pouches. You could use it for your Porta Pro if you wanted, because, well, you might be wondering, how does that thing fit in there? It's because the Porta Pro, if you don't know, it actually folds up like this. So you can fit this thing into a very portable wad, which I appreciate. But otherwise, let's talk about what's different about this thing. So, as you might be noticing, there's a bit of a translucency on this thing, which is unique to the Utility series. And frankly, I think that actually looks pretty good. And then the other thing that's different, I didn't expect this. Two things, okay? One, you can see that the drivers back here are surrounded in red and blue for left and right. That's pretty unique. I have a Porta Pro that has blue surrounds on either side, but I don't have any Porta Pro that has a red on one side. So I think that's cool. As a big fan of the red and blue motif, I dig that. But the other thing that's worth pointing out here, and I'm kind of surprised by this, I didn't expect this, is that this is actually covered in the same surround that's on the KPH40. Which I know it's a little bit difficult to see here, but this is different. In fact, if I'm bold enough, I can, this is how mistakes happen, but this is also how you can mod your Porta Pro, your KOSS stuff. The drivers just pop right off really easily. But yeah, this surround here is very different from, well, maybe very different is an exaggeration, but this is different from the standard Porta Pro enclosure, which again looks more like this. So a slightly different enclosure. It looks like it's still got the same basic enclosure underneath of it, but it's got like a bit of a plastic cladding on top of it, which is interesting. But there you go. There is your Porta Pro Utility series. So you got the red on the one side, the blue on the one side, and it's got the same flat cable thing going on, which again, I'm not a big fan of this flat cable. I'm trying to put this thing back together, and I have broken these before by doing this, so I should be careful. Oh my gosh, don't break it. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, safe. But yeah, there is your Porta Pro Utility. I guess the last thing to take a look at is the different cables that we've got here. So here we've got the standard 3.5 millimeter cable. Let me pull these things in. These are the utility cords that you can buy separately, and I think this is kind of a neat little solution to let you pick which type of connector you want to use. And in fact, it seems like on Amazon they do have some bundles that you can buy with the Porta Pro with USB-C or the Porta Pro with Lightning connector if you want to go ahead and buy them together. The only thing that I'll comment right now on is the pricing on these things. I think is a little bit much. KOSS is charging $45 per cable, which is frankly kind of a lot. Now, it's not just a cable. There is a DAC and an amplifier built into these things, right? That's how they're able to connect to USB-C and or Lightning and produce music. But $45 for a long DAC cable, frankly, I find that pretty overpriced. I would guess like $20 would sound about right. $45 sounds about double what it should be. I guess on the plus side, you do get an inline remote control, which I believe has a microphone. It's got buttons on it, which I'll demonstrate in a little bit. But yeah, 45 bucks does seem like quite a bit. And again, it comes in this flat cable format that, yeah, personally not a big fan of. But that is, you know, a personal choice. I feel like a long time ago, I would have thought of a flat cable as kind of like a premium design, but just when it comes to handling it and living with it, I found that I actually dislike flat cables. But there you go. There is your little inline remote control. Let's go ahead and pull in the Porta Pro just to demonstrate how this thing works, right? The Porta Pro has got this chonky thing in the middle of it. You connect your 2.5 millimeters. So you got that chonky thing plus this chonky thing hanging in the middle of it, terminating in lightning, which is kind of cool. And then you got USB-C just to confirm on this one. But I don't know, other than that, that's about as much as I'm likely to be able to tell you about these headphones. I'm guessing they're going to sound like KOSS stuff, which is they'll sound pretty great with some slight variations in terms of the amount of bass and the amount of treble and that exact balance. I have measured these headphones before, the other KOSS stuff, but I'll give you the caveat that my measurement system for measuring headphones is a little sus, okay? I'm pulling it in right here. Basically, these are little in-ear microphones that I can wear, and then I wear the headphone and I measure it while I'm wearing these microphones, and it produces frequency responses. In fact, let me give you a quick preview of what those things look like. So these are some frequency responses that I've produced before, right? Here's the KPH40i. Here is the stock Porta Pro. And here is the stock KOSS KSC75. And if you want to see what they look like compared to each other, those were my frequency responses of those respective headphones look like. This is actually a little bit wrong, but okay. So those are what those frequency responses look like. So I can get some pretty useful data out of it, but there's one big caveat here, and it's that because I have to fit these microphones into my ear, there is not just the chance, but almost the guarantee that every time I fit them in my ears, the fit's going to be slightly different. And so if I take a frequency response that I've made on one day and compare it to a frequency response that I've made on another day, there's a very good chance that some of the difference between those frequency responses is actually going to be coming from how I've fitted the microphones. So whenever I do headphone measurements and I want to make comparisons, I basically have to redo all of my measurements that I want to compare that same day with that same fitting of the in-ear microphones. And that's what we're going to attempt to do today. Again, if you're just here for the first look on the unboxing, that is the KOSS Utility series. Here you go. Here's your close-up on the Porta Pro Utility. That's the Utility series. If you're interested in checking these things out, I do have links in the description down below. And while you're down there, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the bell, all that stuff. And if you're here live, we'll hang out. Let's have a chat. This is going to be a very casual measurement session. And if you missed the live chat or if you missed the live video, I will have this measurement video, this measurement portion linked in a pinned comment down below, because this video is going to end up being like an hour plus long, and it's going to be frankly kind of boring. But if you're down for the boring, if you're down for the measurements, you want to see the squigs, stick around. That's what we're about to do. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next super review, and shout out to KOSS for sending these things in.